It's 8:07 on News Talk 1079. Welcome to this Tuesday. If you'd like to reach us via text 208-542-1079. Doug Schoen.
I remember before Bill Clinton was elected, Democrats had gone too far left. But there was a movement, the New Democrats, who wanted to bring the party back to the center, which we did with Bill Clinton. Balance the budget, reduce the debt and deficit, cut welfare, tough on crime. This Democratic Party, Laura, is going further left, becoming abusive, and I think, frankly, to be blunt, irrelevant or worse. And that is tragic for my party and tragic, I'd say, for our two-party system.
It is devastating for the Democrats, but they just keep marching forward, and that's okay. Like lemmings falling off the cliff. And that's what's happening to the Democrats. So we and there are multiple examples of this. Elizabeth Warren did an interview. I don't know who this is. It looks like some podcast. And this is how that went.
Do you regret saying that President Biden had a mental acuity? He had a sharpness to him. You said that up until July of last year.
I said what I believe to be true.
And you think he was as sharp as you?
I said I had not seen decline. And I hadn't at that point.
You did not see any decline from 2024 Joe Biden to 2021 Joe Biden?
Not when I said that. You know, the thing is, he was sharp. He was on his feet. I saw him. Live event. I had meetings with him a couple of times.
Senator, on his feet is not praise. He can speak in sentences is not praise.
All right. Fair enough. Fair enough. Look, the question is, what are we going to do now?
Okay.
No, it is not. That's not your question to either ask or answer. I mean, maybe as a Democrat, but I will tell you what you have to do is stop trying to avoid the reality and the obvious and the injury that you inflicted on America over the prior 4 years. That's what you have to do now. If you want any, and I think it's a Hail Mary pass, to be honest with you. I really think the Democrat Party is in way bigger trouble than they're acknowledging and that many people understand. They're doubling down. Look at what they're doing right now. Watch. Like if you said, okay, let's sit down. It's an ad hoc Republican strategy meeting. How can we ruin the Democrat Party? Well, let's bait them into being sympathetic toward MS-13. Let's do that. And then in addition to that, let's get them to cheer on boys playing against girls on the basketball court and every other court and field and track. And you could go through and list all of the things that they are doing right now. And Republicans could not have picked a better strategy to destroy the Democrat Party than what the Democrats are choosing for themselves right now. Today, in fact, right now, the Supreme Court is hearing oral arguments in Mahmood versus Taylor. And you might ask, well, what's Mahmood versus Taylor? Well, it's a case that revolves around a coalition of parents who believe they have a religious right to keep their kids from reading books that discuss LGBTQ plus themes. And by the way, this is News Nation, which I feel has done a fairly decent job. This is garbage verbiage. There's a new term, garbage verbiage. Parents who believe they have a religious right to keep their kids from reading books that discuss LGBTQ plus themes. Can you believe that a journalistic enterprise is writing those words in America today? Well, this is a case that surrounds parents who believe they have a right to determine what books their kids do and don't read. Okay, it's absurd. More lemmings off the cliff. Run faster, lemmings. You're flying off the cliff at a pretty fast pace. The parents are not asking for the books to be removed from the schools. Like they're not wanting a ban. The humble ask is that You can't make my kid read these books. We're going to opt out. And I might be understating this. I would not be humble about this. I would be, oh, hell no about this. No school has the right to force your kid to read. You know, I remember back, 80s, 90s, and maybe early 2000s. And a lot of times this came from conspiracy corners where they said, our schools are just indoctrination centers. Okay, all right, you might be overstating things just a little bit. Well, whether it was true back then or not might be debatable, but it is overwhelmingly and abundantly true now that that's what schools have turned into. It's a place to go where your children are forced. Maybe not in Idaho ubiquitously, but in Maryland, major American state, and I'm betting there are other states that are right there with them, that they believe they have a right to force kids to read certain books. That would be called indoctrination. No way around it. The books include Love, Violet, which tells the story of a same-sex crush between students. Another book is Uncle Bobby's Wedding, which illustrates a gay wedding. And then there's another one, Born Ready. It tells the story of a transgender boy. Let me stop there for just a moment. Do I believe these books? I absolutely would defend the right of the authors and the illustrators and the publishers. I would go to great sacrifice to defend their right to publish these books in America. No doubt about it. We have to be willing to defend the freedom of expression. But do you remember, and I'm gonna throw a curveball at you here. Remember the fight over Prop 1? And you had Judge Windmill years ago, like almost 15 years ago. He ruled that the right of association inherently includes the right to not associate. So your First Amendment right that gives you the opportunity to express whatever you feel. I mean, as long as you're not, there are certain very limited exclusions to that, but for the most part, be who you want to be, express what you want to express. You also have the right to refrain from other people's expressions. You're never forced to absorb and ingest other people's First Amendment offerings. But you have a school district in Maryland that feels like you don't have the right to refrain, the right to abstain, the right to opt out. I will tell you, we as conservatives are... we've been on the defensive for so long. We're starting to get used to being on the offense. Our foot is getting used to the accelerator, and I am loving it. We saw that in the legislative session this last year, where we decided we weren't just going to protect what we had left, but rather we were going to proactively add to what we have. That is the attitude that we have got to maintain, or else we'll lose it all. We'll end up losing because every year it seemed like the left was cracking into more and more and more, and part of them cracking into it is a migration that I want to spend just a couple of minutes talking about. And we see this with a lot of things. They've grown, they have migrated from we humbly request inclusion to we now demand that you read this. Not to go from availability to forced consumption in a matter of, 20, 30 years? This is how the left operate. This is how they will always operate. This is how they do. They open the door with, I come here hat in hand. Please include me. That's all we're asking. We just want to be included. Okay, that's great. I love inclusion. I'm all for it. The problem is it morphs over time. And not only it starts out as a humble request for inclusion, which is totally good. I'm on board with that. But you give it enough time, and it is a militant demand for acceptance and consumption of what they're putting forward. And as conservatives, it's not just our right or our prerogative. I would say it's our duty to push back. Print what you want, publish what you want. Nobody should ever be forced to ingest that. And so I'm hopeful. We'll see how the Supreme Court does on this. By the way, this is Montgomery County Public School District, and the books were originally added in 2022 for students in pre-K through 5th grade. Previously, parents could choose to opt out when the books were used as compelled instruction in class, but that option was eliminated last year when a federal appeals court ruled that kids could not step out of reading programs over LGBTQ plus content. As a result, a coalition of parents... See, this is what's weird. This is what is really weird. They view non-consumption as discrimination. Discrimination used to be that you proactively didn't let people have a job, or you proactively would not rent to someone because they're gay or they're black or they're Mormon or they're whatever. You had to proactively prohibit them from doing something. Imagine the sense of entitlement that must exist, that you view it as discrimination if a court will not force your viewpoint onto the children of America. It's absurd, really, that if I say no thanks, then that is a basis for discrimination. If I simply want to refrain from what you're offering, there's no injury there. Now, maybe your feelings are hurt, but there's no material injury. There's no economic injury. There's no reputational harm. Nothing. I just don't want to read a book about a gay crush. I don't want to read a book about a gay wedding. That doesn't make anybody anti-gay. It's just not what they want. And there are good reasons why parents don't want their kids to read that. Those are grown-up themes, and it certainly is a discussion for later in life for a lot of parents. This is one, the school board's SCOTUS brief reads this way. The storybooks themselves do not instruct about gender or sexuality. They are not textbooks. They merely introduce students to characters who are LGBTQ or have LGBTQ family members and those characters' experiences and points of view. Okay, that may be fine. That's still not a basis for you to force the kids to read it. That's still not a basis for you to short-circuit the wishes of parents. Schools have already pulled at least 2 books, but the district continues to argue these stories are meant to promote acceptance and teach diverse cultures to children, not to violate any constitutional rights. Okay, then stop violating their constitutional rights, which is I can refrain, and the reasons for my choice to abstain is none of your business, period. No commas, nothing. It's just simply none of your business. You don't have a right to understand my motivation, why I don't want to read this book you're putting in front of me. See, this is the boundaries we have to recreate, and I think we're doing a pretty good job. I'm hopeful. I mean, I'm usually not that great at reading what the Supreme Court's going to do. However, on this one, and we probably won't know until June, I can see this one being an 8-1 or a 7-2. I hope. I mean, in our favor, too, by the way. It's 8:23 on News Talk 107.9. If you'd like to reach us on the Stones Automotive Group, call and text line 208-542-1079. 8:28 on News Talk 107.9. The Stones Automotive Group call and text line is 208-542-1079. Neil Larson, Julie Mason joining me in studio. Julie, I think I'm going to start a podcast. Tell me what you think. Throwing an idea by you here.
Okay.
I want to start a podcast that is secretly for the children of liberals. And we're going to read Rush Limbaugh's kids' books in the podcast. We're going to read the Bible. Mm-hmm. And other scriptures, and I'm not quite sure how I'm going to market this at this point, but I think that I can try to privately reach digitally, maybe through some clever online marketing, to reach the children of Democrats and liberals and tell them, do not tell your parents about this podcast.
There has to be a level of coercion there. How are you going to do that? Like, you got to force it on them somehow.
Well, I don't have access to the schools.
Okay.
So I can't really do that. Some liberals do go to church, but I'll figure that out. And you know what? Even if there's no coercion, I mean, I think the attractiveness of the ideas themselves could be coercive enough that it makes so much more sense than my bozo parents are making that I'm going to follow that. So the attractiveness of the ideas themselves may be the coercion.
It's the underground. It's
Yes.
like the Underground Railroad, but with podcasts.
You may have just named the podcast.
Okay. The Underground Railroad.
Yes.
Okay.
And make it a safe place.
Mm-hmm.
If you're the child of liberals and you instinctively know your parents are whack jobs, this is going to be the safe place for you to come and listen to reason, common sense, and rationality.
Okay. Do it. They need this in their lives, but here's the problem. Is that feels so yucky to say that out loud, right? Because parents should have the final choice.
But they don't believe that.
No, the left is good with scheming.
So if they think they can come after our kids with their trash ideas, then their children are fair game.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, that's their rules.
It is their rules.
Let's live according to their rules and maybe save their children from them and from their bad ideas.
Yeah, go for it. You have my support.
I think it would be great. Like, I don't know that I'll do it.
You could do a YouTube channel.
Yeah, you could.
Kids like to be read to.
Yeah.
You could do it that way.
That's true. I could be the Miss Rachel, but I'd be Mr. Rachel. And we would teach like really cool stuff about the Constitution and about freedom and about being an individual.
Put it to really catchy tunes.
Yes, and we could write little parodies about how climate change is largely a massive hoax and fraud.
You could pretend. You could say, you know how we pretend to be pop stars, or we make believe doing this, or we make believe doing that. Well, climate change is make believe.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Because hoax is not like a 5-year-old word.
Yeah, but make believe is.
See, yes.
I'll help you.
Okay, you'll be
I'll
my
produce the
consultant.
show. It's
okay,
good.
That's good. It's climate make believe.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Well, there's also gender make believe.
Mm-hmm.
There's lots of make believe going on.
Oh, for sure.
Everywhere.
Racial make believe.
Yeah.
You take a problem that is not as nearly as relevant as it used to be. Relevant is probably not the right word. As prominent, that's the word. As it used to be, but you make it seem like it's happening everywhere.
Yeah.
In syrup, in in songs, in TV shows, it's happening. Whether you look at it,
That's true.
That's not actually happening. Coffee is not racist.
Yeah.
But if you ask them, the make-believe police say it is.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Somebody is throwing an insult at me in the text. I'm not sure what that was about. That's all right. Someone said, remember when the Christian Coalition was active in helping elect conservative candidates on school boards and such? The leftists like to say that the conservatives aren't telling you who they are and what they're after. Why? That is the approach they use and the first thing that comes to mind. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so they're saying, no, that we're very open about the fact that we're conservative and Christian, and we don't try to hide it. I think the left tries to hide who they are.
Yeah, that was the mockery of what you were saying.
Yes.
Is that if you did it like the left, you would scheme and do it behind their back and get to the kids.
Yes. Right, that's true. But I'm only doing it because they're okay with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the game plan they use.
It's their rule. So let's use their rules.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Well, that would be like playing a a basketball game where you can't play one-on-one defense, right?
Yeah.
The one team can play that defense, the other team can't.
Yeah.
That's not fair rules. You can play whatever. If they have the ability to play something, you have the ability to play something.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, right. Which is an effective argument tool that even if you don't personally believe something, you can hold somebody accountable to their own rules. Mm-hmm. So, someone texted this in, Julie. Quote, the kids shouldn't be forced to read something they don't want to read is not your best argument. I was forced to read Seawolf by Jack London. I hate that book, and nobody cared. Okay, this is about parents. And if parents wanted to opt you out of reading Seawolf by Jack London, I would defend their right to do that. Not because the kids didn't want to read it. Okay, parents are the decision makers here. Mm-hmm. And this isn't about kids not wanting. Kids show up and they're like, "Oh yeah, tell me a story. I want to hear a story." They don't have the mental filters to know that a book about a gay crush has lots of moral components to it that they may not be ready to absorb or understand or whatever. This is about parents being able to opt their kids out of material they find objectionable. And so it actually is a good argument. But it's not about the kids. It's about the parents being able to make a decision for their kids.
Well, previously you asked me the question, if you don't think algebra is worth learning, can you opt out of algebra?
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, you can opt out of algebra if you want to. You might fail the class. So if you hated reading that book as a kid, you can opt out of reading it. You're going to get a bad score.
Yeah.
If you do.
There's a consequence.
There's a consequence. The point of this is that currently, if the child or the parent utilizes their right to freedom of religion, there's a bad score.
Yeah,
and that's where you're trampling on the rights. There's no right that exists in the Constitution to opt out of algebra.
Yeah,
you can.
Yeah.
And your parents can choose to educate you a different way. That's the option. But if you stay in the public school system and you opt out of algebra, there's no fundamental right that protects you there.
Yeah.
But you do have a fundamental right of religion to not hear about gay sex if that goes against your religious freedoms.
Yeah. Yeah, or gay relationships or age. I mean, parents can determine age appropriateness. Mm-hmm. And if they can determine, I don't want my kid ever reading it in K through 12, mm-hmm. that's okay. I don't know, what is this addiction to foisting upon others the morals that you have for yourself?
Because they want you to be like them. This is the conversation we had yesterday, that the coexist is a false flag. It's a false front. That bumper sticker is a lie.
Yeah, it's true.
They do not want to coexist. Their version of coexist is you're going to become like me.
Yeah, you're going to do what I tell you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's weird because they are not for inclusion. They're not. This is the Boise mayor and the flag flying in front of City Hall. She's not for inclusion. There's a very specific group excluded mm-hmm. from the LGBTQ.
Large. Majority.
A vast majority that is excluded from the LGBTQ
mm-hmm.
flag.
Yeah.
Representation. So right. It's weird.
Again, it's a false front.
They twist things in their mind. Like
mm-hmm.
I think so much about the left's argument is just smoke and mirrors. It's just a distortion of the truth.
And what I like about the Supreme Court case is nobody is saying that parent A, who loves these LGBTQ themed books, can't share these books with their kids. I'm not taking that away from them. Yeah. The group bringing lawsuit isn't taking that away from them. You're not asking that be taken away from them. If they choose to do that with their child, they can choose to do that with their child. But you can't force it on another child.
Yeah, right.
We're back to the you do you, we'll do us.
Yeah.
And they're not okay with that arrangement.
No, they don't. They don't like that. Well, they can't make the social progress they want to make if that's the standard.
Mm-hmm.
Their ideology it doesn't do well in a freedom ecosystem.
Mm-hmm. I'm not asking public school to make a rule that this child can't have that book in their backpack. Go ahead. If the parent and the child made that decision and the book is there, that is their right. They can do that. What the problem is with the crux of this lawsuit is it's being forced onto the kids.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what? I feel like the Supreme Court, this is going to be a pretty quick deliberation.
When it is a fundamental freedom of religion, I don't know how you can see it any other way.
Yeah, I don't
It's supposed to be a constitutional court.
Because there's a very strong moral component here. Mm-hmm. I'm not arguing that you can force kids to learn algebra. Like I'm not going to make that argument. However, I will say you can have a separate standard for these books simply because they do have a strong and divisive moral component to them. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know if there's any legitimate argument out there that I have a moral objection to the quadratic equation.
The Pythagorean theorem, though. That one, yes. I can't do that one.
You know how many times I've had to look away from the hypotenuse?
Obtuse angles.
Which that's geometry, not out. We're now migrating, but it's the same argument, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah, that's true. And I'm acutely aware.
Are we doing this?
No.
Because if we subtract out our personalities here,
that's true.
The Constitution doesn't have a personality.
Well, the argument's based on division here, Julie.
How many times do we have to go over this?
Times, yes, nice. This could get exponentially out of control.
To infinity.
Yes, right. That is true. But no, like I don't think there's a moral component to math. Mm-hmm. Like is there ever a moral justification for opting your kids out of math? You might have a good reason, but is there a moral reason that you could even think of that you would take your kids out of math class?
Well, not even a moral. There's not a constitutional. Yeah. Because the freedom of religion doesn't apply to math.
True. That's true.
That's my point in this whole thing. This is a fundamental right every citizen of America has.
Yeah.
And you're asking it to be taken away.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, you're right. And yeah. All right. It's 8:42. News Talk 1079 208 542 1079 if you'd like to join us.
We'll be back after a quick break.
Hey, it's Brad from Now 105.1 and QP99. I'm in the studio here. I love our studios, by the way. Ranger Rick back there. There's Neal and Julie doing their thing. Hey, when you want to advertise on the radio, what do? You call the radio station, right? But what do you do when you want to advertise on Facebook and Instagram and Hulu and Disney Plus and Peacock and the other TV streaming services? You can kind of click around on them and make guesses or read books or take courses online on how to do that advertising. Or you could call us at the radio station. At Sandhill Media, we take care of your local radio and digital marketing. So reach out to us at sandhillmediagroup.com and we'll make sure that your message gets heard and seen wherever your customers are.
And for no good reason, I'm going to play the clip of Elizabeth Warren squirming. Listen, this was so fun to listen to.
Do you regret saying that President Biden had a mental acuity? He had a sharpness to him. You said that up until July of last year.
I said what I believe to be true.
And you think he was as sharp as you?
I said I had not seen decline. And I hadn't at that point.
You did not see any decline from 2024 Joe Biden to 2021 Joe Biden?
Not when I said that. You know, the thing is, he was sharp. He was on his feet. I saw him live event. I had meetings with him a couple of times.
Senator, on his feet is not praise. He can speak in sentences is not praise.
All right. Fair enough. Fair enough. Look, the question is, what are we going to do now?
Well, what we're going to do now is take a break. And what we may do later is play that clip again.
Yeah.
So, by the way, those pauses were not exaggerated at all. It was awkward as it sounds.
I wish they could see her.
Yeah. Yeah, she really did squirm. It's 8:44. We'll be back. It's 8:52 now on News Talk 1079. Neil Larson along with Julie Mason.
Let's chat about Town and Country Garden. I just said the wrong advertiser.
No, we can talk about Town and Country Gardens. That's fine.
I was thinking about Rex.
Yes.
And so that's why that came out of my mouth.
I brought up Rex. Rex, we're so interested in this glow-in-the-dark petunia, Julie, that we're going to try to get him to bring one in and we'll take some pictures. Because I can't wait to see one of these.
It's super cool. I'm sorry about that. I was still thinking about how are we going to make this work? Where would we take the picture?
Yeah.
Like all of that was running through my mind. And so, let's talk about Town and Country Gardens.
I think the only place would be the janitor's closet. That's probably where we're going to have to do it. So take the picture of the petunia.
In the janitor's closet.
Yes,
this is a really cool event that Rex is planning at Town and Country Gardens. It happens this Saturday in the evening time. There's going to be music. There's going to be a food truck. It's a party atmosphere at Town and Country Gardens. That's because they're unveiling this specific petunia that has been genetically modified to glow in the dark. And there's a limited supply of them. You can learn all of the information about the petunia and the event at mygardengeek.com. Again, that's mygardengeek.com. That's their official website. And there's also an option when you get to that website to sign up for their newsletter that helps you get on the VIP list for the event.
Highly encouraged to do that because it comes regularly. It gives you lots of cool tips and tricks. Great newsletter to be a part of. And so, plus they have the 4-step lawn program you should get for your lawn. If you love your lawn, you'll get them the 4-step lawn program.
You want it to be green.
Yeah, absolutely. And all your other lawn and garden needs, south of Idaho Falls, Yellowstone Highway across from the malt plant. We'll be back after this. It's 8:58, and that's going to do it for this hour, but we'll be back another hour coming up. Would love to hear from you on any of a number of issues that we've been talking about this morning. Welcome back. It's 9:07 on News Talk 1079. Hour 2 underway, 208-542-1079. If you'd like to join us on the program this morning, we would love to have you if you want to weigh in. We had a couple of texts, Julie. I think the Attorney General's reaction. I liked it. I think it made sense. I want attorneys general to not stretch the law for exotic purposes, especially when it's a political opponent. And so he's exploring civil options, which I think there are perhaps some legitimate civil options there to pursue, which is not going to be a crime. It's not going to put Mayor McLean in jail, and it may not be a formal fine. However, there may be some kind of civil action he could take that would lead to a court order ordering her to take it down.
Mm-hmm. And then if she defies that.
Right. Then if she defies that, the court could then hold her in contempt, which is a crime.
Mm-hmm.
And so that might be the route you have to take, which I think is a legitimate route. If, she obviously has no problem doing the double middle finger to the legislative branch of our government. Will she do the same thing to the judicial branch? Because the left seems to love the judicial branch. They seem to think the judicial branch is the only branch with power when Republicans are in charge.
But they say it's equal. I think that Raul Labrador's letter, for me, says, hey, you guys, take a breath. You want me to get from point A to point B. No stops in between. And I don't have an option for that. And I'm not going to stretch the law to make point A to point B an option.
Yeah.
But we might be able to get to an enjoyable solution if I go A, B, C, D, and there's a couple of players doing these steps with me,
Yes.
we then might be able to get to the option that, or to the end result that we're all hoping for.
Yeah.
And for me, there's an unspoken in his letter, which is this is going to create political damage for her in the long run.
Yeah.
Have some patience.
You know, you said something earlier this morning, Julie, that I had not thought about before, but I think it's spot on. She is the mayor of Idaho's largest city and Idaho's capital city. Now, she doesn't formally represent Idaho. Her constituents are the residents of Boise. But symbolically, she represents Idaho. I mean, she's the most visible mayor in the entire state. And when with great, what is it? With great responsibility comes great something else. Power.
Expectation?
Yeah, something. Anyway, I think it was Uncle Ben from Spider-Man that said that. Anyway, whatever. You know what I'm saying.
There's an Uncle Ben in Spider-Man?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Uncle
I'm not
Ben.
a superhero girl. I just don't know those at all.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Uncle Ben was the Peter Parker's uncle. Yeah. So
Yeah. Okay.
that's why they call him Uncle Ben. I just realized that. That's how that works. So anyway, with great power comes great responsibility. And she has a lot of power. She's the mayor of Idaho's biggest town and Idaho's capital city. And part of her responsibility, in fact, she took an oath as part of the responsibility that she would uphold the laws of Idaho. And because her own personal beliefs and ideology and ambition are more important to her than the oath that she took. In fact, quite frankly, that's more important to her than her own integrity, which is really sad.
Yeah.
Really sad. And I would agree with you. I think she's probably got her sycophantic cheerleaders that are saying, you're the greatest, you're the best mayor in the whole world. I think in the long run, this harms her. And I would bet you that there are probably some sensible Democrats in Boise that are going, I get why she's doing this, but you can't just do the double middle finger to the legislature. Laws have to matter at some point.
Mm-hmm. And I think that the talking point of all of this actually plays in the legislators' favor, meaning, well, we thought you were smart enough and responsible enough to follow a law without a penalty. I guess we miscalculated. You are not smart enough and you are not responsible enough to follow a law without penalty, so we will make one. And that would be my messaging over and over and over again with this.
Yeah. Yeah,
Make her
I would too.
look foolish.
Yes, I would agree. I would hope, and maybe they are. I don't know, but this is where the Republican Party could really, really shine. And maybe it wouldn't be enough to defeat Mayor McLean. I'd love to get a more sensible, even Democrat. If we could get just a center-left Democrat in there, that'd be great. She's far left. I think that would be great for Boise and much better for Idaho. But every Republican lawmaker should be condemning her on their social media channels. They should be doing what Raul Labrador is doing on his. They passed this law.
Yeah, my question is, why aren't they?
I don't know. There's a few that have spoken out.
Yeah.
And maybe they feel like, well, that's a nonpartisan thing. I'm part of the legislature. She's a city. Like, they're two different spheres almost. I don't care. It passed a law that governs her, and she is giving you the middle finger. You need to speak up for the law that you passed and get a consensus and a chorus of condemnation against her, and maybe she'll start to feel that heat.
Great coaches command respect. That's universal.
Yes.
Great coaches command respect. I would say the same thing for lawmakers. Doesn't mean you bully people into respect. Your behaviors command respect. Trump is real good at this.
Yes.
Be a little bit Trumpian.
Yeah, I would. And maybe, you know what? I think sometimes lawmakers are a little iffy calling out other elected officials because, it's a rough and tumble game and sometimes it's not that comfortable. Okay, send out an email to each other saying, let's do this on the same day. So you can operate in numbers. It's a little easier to do that. And then as an entire Republican, the Democrats aren't going to, and the Republicans who are actually Democrats aren't going to. But at least all the lawmakers that voted for this, they ought to be posting to their social media, we condemn Mayor McLean for openly defying a law that we've passed. You know what else? I sent you a video yesterday. She did this little roundtable. I will give her some kudos. She's a fairly accessible mayor. Like, she does a lot of things in the community.
She's not hiding.
Yeah, she's not. So if we're going to look at the bad, we'll mention some of the good. So she sat down, dodged every tough question, but she said, we're reviewing it. You don't have to review it. You're in clear violation of the law. There's no reviewing going on. It's like if I get picked up and my speedometer said 98 miles an hour and the cop said I clocked you at 98 miles an hour and you said, well, I'll review it. No, no, the facts are clear. You're clearly in violation.
Yeah.
You don't need attorneys to look at this.
Right.
You've broken the law.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to the phones. 208-542-1079. Caller, go ahead. How are you today?
I'm doing all right. How are you guys?
Good, doing well.
Hey, I just wanted to comment on this and say, maybe some of the legislators feel like this was a oversight in not putting a penalty or some sort of financial consequence on this, and they feel like, oh, oops, and that's why they're not commenting. But I ultimately think her reasoning is just stupid when she says that the law was ambiguous. When she says that there's no penalty, there is something to that in the sense that, I've often believed that a law without an actual penalty, without enforcement, is barely more than a resolution or a wish.
Yeah. Yeah, it's sort of like a joint memorial. Like that's kind of what it is. That's true. And I would agree with that. I think every law that creates a violation of some kind needs to carry a penalty with it. I think that ought to just be standard for writing the law.
Yeah, I don't know why they left that out or how that was missed. If that was an oversight, it just seems really odd.
So let me, before we let you go, caller, because I do have more calls to get to here, but we had Representative Ehart call in yesterday, and she said, look at the silver lining, guys. The left, the Democrats, and some squishy Republicans have always shied away from including a private cause of action with bills because they're like, well, you can't do this because then it's a litigious society and everybody's suing everybody. And but this Mayor McLean is giving lawmakers all the premise they need in the future now to include a private cause of action section to these laws that are passed. And I don't necessarily like it, but I think it may reach the point where it's just needed. That if you have these lawmakers, I guess, pave the way for residents to sue a mayor who's flying a divisive flag. Mm-hmm. And then she won't. I promise you, she'll take it down.
She's definitely showing her true colors with this one.
Yeah, it's true. All right, thank you for the call. 208-542-1079. Let's go to the next caller. Welcome to the show.
Good morning. I think the mayor bungled this politically speaking because I think at some point she's going to end up caving in. I don't know what that looks like, but I think the flag will come down one way or another with or without penalties, and she's going to look like she gave in. I think a better option would have been for her to make a big spectacle of this. Like, look, the evil Republican-led legislative body of the state of Idaho is making us take this flag down. She could have had fireworks, a parade, a big event to take the flag down, a funeral. She could have weaponized this to fire up her base for the next election cycle and say, look what they're doing. We need different leaders. Look, they made us take this flag down. So I think she messed this whole thing up politically, and now she's going to have egg on her face when eventually the flag does come down.
I think it's a very astute observation. I agree with you. She had a good opportunity here, and she's kind of botched it.
Right. She could have split the baby in essence and made both sides happy without causing more divisive behavior in the community, which is always the issue, right? We just keep driving the wedge further and further between the people. So,
yep. Good point.
Have a great day.
Thank you for the call.
I like the theme he's developing, though, here, which he said one way or another. I feel like we should be playing that song, one way or another.
Yeah.
I'm going to get you.
Going to get you.
Yeah, because that's what's going to happen. One way or another, she's going to fall short in this.
That has to be in Arrow's library, right?
It's got to be there. I mean, if you look at all of the various ways, one way or another, she's caused herself political harm. It might be a civil lawsuit that gets her. At the backstop, the where the buck ends is next January when they pass a law that has a penalty attached to it. So one way or another, we're going to get them.
Yes. Yeah, and you know what?
There you go.
I think that's Blondie, and I was right.
Were you right? Okay,
it's
good.
Blondie. So, all right, we'll take a break. It's 9:20 on News Talk 107.9. Hi, Facebook.
Hi, Facebook. Did anybody else's house sound like it was going to fall down last night with the wind?
Oh, I didn't even notice.
There were a few gusts that were kind of nasty.
What time?
Maybe about 7:30, 8 o'clock, like that range.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I think it was a drive. Okay, this would be a great topic, Julie. Maybe not today, but sometime soon. And I think I don't think it's controversial for us to talk about it, but I think it's a very radioactive topic, which is someone asked, when is AI going to take over teaching our children?
Oh, yeah.
Because I don't think AI will ever be 100% our kids' teachers. I think that they could be a big part of how kids learn, especially when the verbal models allow them to talk back and forth and to see what kids are writing. I mean, already AI is doing image analysis, and I was working with AI. What was I doing?
Creating the website?
Maybe. No, but it was asking me to upload a screenshot of the errors that I was getting. So I didn't have to copy and text. I just I did the print screen. I did a screenshot and then attached it. And it read the character recognition. It read it like a human being did. So I think kids' assignments will be graded by AI. I think that what they write for answers will be analyzed. And there's some stuff that's probably subjective, like essays that you write. But if you're just writing the answers to problems, math problems or whatever, I think AI can take up a big share of that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And all you have to do is look at history to see how things change throughout the generations, right? So you're 17, 16 in high school, and you have a dirt bike and something breaks on the dirt bike. How do you fix the dirt bike? You tinker with it until you figure it out.
Yeah.
Then we had kids. When my 17-year-old wanted to figure out how to do something, he went to YouTube.
Yeah.
And learned it. Now, my son has kids, and you know where that kid's going to go to? ChatGPT or a version like it.
Yes. Yes. So I did something the other day, and it's a different AI model. Can't remember what it's called. Anyway, you know that app idea that I've told you about in the past that could, I think, revolutionize our industry? It wrote the app.
Yeah.
The code. Several minutes.
Yeah.
It went through, and it was writing code. And it didn't have it quite complete because there were little pieces that still needed to be put in. I just wanted to see what it would do. And I was astounded at the functionality that it was able to create for that. You'd need a team for the finishing touches, but it got you 95% of the way there.
So my son-in-law is actually doing this right now. So he's developing an app for a business idea that I think is pretty awesome. He had ChatGPT write the app, and he has spent the last 2 weeks refining portions of it to make it actually function to a level that is appeasing to people.
Yeah.
Because an app can be put out there and it kind of stinks.
Yes.
It's got hiccups and blocks and whatever. And you can just keep working it and working it and working it to get it to a spot.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And, I mean, it's good at just refining like that, too. All right, 208-542-1079 on News Talk 1079. And Julie, what do you think should be the reaction of conservatives to Mayor McLean? Now, we want the Attorney General to do it, right? Just Just prosecute her. She's breaking the law. It's not that easy. There really is no good direct enforcement mechanism for her breaking this law. And you know what? She knows it.
Mm-hmm. I would say follow what Attorney General Labrador says to do at the end of his letter, which was flood her office with emails.
Yeah.
Expressing your disappointment, expressing that how am I supposed to teach my children to follow laws when their own mayor isn't willing to follow laws? There are obvious nonpartisan explanations for why she shouldn't be doing this.
Yeah.
You don't even have to pick a side.
Yeah.
Flood her inbox.
Yeah. I think she will. She won't listen to the law, obviously. She will listen to political pressure.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
Now, is she going to listen to people outside of Boise? Maybe not.
Maybe not.
Although I think you could send an email saying, look, I don't live in Boise. I'm not one of your constituents, thank goodness, but you represent Idaho as the mayor of the capital and the largest city. And you're setting a terrible example for our children. You're teaching them all they have to do. They don't have to obey laws they don't like or they don't agree with.
Mm-hmm. I think that that's what she's doing. I also would be bold enough to say that if this flag is not flown, I ask the LGBTQ community to be tough enough to handle it. Meaning, I have lots of flags that could represent me in my life. I have logos for businesses. I have religious flags that could be flown. I have conservative flags that could be flown. The fact that they're not flying at the Boise City Hall doesn't hurt my feelings. And so I'm asking the members of LGBTQ to also be as resilient. It's not necessary.
Okay. That's an interesting point, and I want to ask a follow-up because I agree with your point. It used to, remember when we had the gay marriage debate, and they used to always throw this question at us as conservatives if we believed that marriage was only between a man and a woman. They would say, tell me how a gay marriage is hurting you, or point on the dolly where gay marriage is hurting, whatever. I would ask in the same spirit, how are you hurt if the rainbow flag is not flying at Boise City Hall?
Yeah, that's a great question.
What's harming you if that flag is not flying? Because I'll tell you what's being harmed by it flying. The idea of the rule of law. That is being harmed in Idaho because Mayor McLean insists on flying that flag. There is actual harm being done to our system because she is operating in a lawless fashion.
She's created a victim.
Yeah, she's creating a cultural harm because that's an example for our kids that we don't want. Mm-hmm. Who gets to operate that way, that I only pay attention to the laws that I agree with? Mm-hmm. That's you can't operate that way and sustain your republic. You just can't. But I would ask that question. And you know what? I know we have lots of listeners that have different backgrounds here. I would ask you that question. If the LGBTQ flag is not flown at Boise City Hall, how would that harm the LGBTQ community?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And if we're going to somehow temper the emotions that surround this, I think that that's a good question to go, hey, I'm trying to understand your emotions. Obviously, they're very heightened around this, but explain why they're heightened. How are you harmed? And if you're harmed by it not flying, why am I not harmed? Like, then don't I get to claim harm that my flags are not flying? Doesn't somebody else who's, let's say it's somebody who's deeply embedded in the Navy.
Yeah.
Is it harmful to them if the naval flag is not up there? Or what if it's somebody that's deeply embedded in the medical community? Are they harmed if the flag with the stick and the serpents or whatever, the blue one, is not flying? Yeah. Are they harmed? You're asking only one group of people to be represented, and you're saying if they're not represented, it's painful. Well, why isn't it painful to other people?
Yeah, right. That's true. That's true. And the insistence on it is that a subconscious message that you're so fragile, we have to fly a flag to placate you?
I'm sure there are some people that actually take that approach.
Is that a fair question?
Yeah, I'm sure there's people who are like, well, I don't want to hurt them. They're hurt in a lot of ways, and this is an easy one for me to give into. Okay, sure, it is easy, but that's weird to me because you're actually not fixing any kind of a problem.
Well, you know what it kind of reminds me of, Julie, and the left does this all the time, where they placate certain groups. They tell black communities, you're not smart enough to produce an ID at the ballot box. We're not going to require one of you. Mm-hmm. That's racism. Mm-hmm. That lowered expectation for a certain group of people is some kind of ism and some kind of discrimination. And when you think that certain groups based on a demographic characteristic, in this case, LGBTQ plus individuals, are somehow not going to be able to abide their flag not being flown at City Hall, that is an insult to them.
You're diminishing them.
You are diminishing them. You and I, Julie, we try to be good members of our faith. I have never driven by City Hall going, I am so oppressed because there's not an Angel Moroni flag being flown. Mm-hmm. I've never felt that way. I've never felt that way because some other thing in my life that's very important to me is not represented on a flag flying at City Hall.
Right. I think there's a lot of things in people's lives that carry the same level of weight as being a member of the LGBTQ community. And I say that because I believe that would be the response by some members. Well, you don't understand how truly it forms their life. Okay, I would say almost every Olympic athlete will tell you, because of the hours and hours and hours of dedication and training, the changing your eating plan, the doing the sport for 10 and 12 hours a day, for foregoing lots of other things in your life so you can be an Olympic athlete.
Yeah.
I would say that changed their lives. And they don't expect you to put a snowboarding flag up there. They don't expect you to put a swimming flag up there. They don't
Yeah.
There are other things that ultimately change your life besides LGBTQ.
You know what my hunch is, Julie? If we could, I bet you there's a lot of people who are gay or lesbian, maybe even transgender, who would say, it's really not that important to me that they fly that flag. Mm-hmm. This is virtue signaling by a white liberal who's probably straight. I think she's straight. And she's just trying to garner points with other white liberals, quite frankly. Mm-hmm. And but I would bet you that most gay people are probably going, I don't need somebody else to fly a flag. I just need them to accept me for who I am. I want to work with them and have a good relationship. I want them to laugh with me. I want them to go to lunch with me. I want them. That's probably what they really want. They don't need a virtue signaling liberal to hoist a flag up on a flagpole.
Mm-hmm. But that's kind of easy for her. I say that meaning it didn't take a lot of, hey, I'm going to take of my time.
Yeah.
And my kindness and I'm going to sit with you and know you. It didn't take that kind of an effort. It's not easy because it might cost her a political office. So I get that there's some difficulty there. But this is my issue with people who, okay, we're going to go back to a topic we talked about yesterday, the black square on your Instagram. What did you have to give to do that? 7 seconds.
Yeah, that's true.
And you felt like you moved mountains?
Yeah.
How about you actually go talk to somebody?
Yeah.
How about you be kind and take care of somebody? That's moving mountains.
Do you think there's also a sense too, like I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of, a community that is in the minority and they struggle to feel accepted by society. Do you think they would say, I don't want my flag being flown or the flag that I love or whatever. Align with. I don't want that to be a middle finger. I don't want that being flown in a context that actually creates more division than inclusion.
We could give everyone the benefit of the doubt, but that's what it is.
I'm not sure they're all thinking that, but I think if I were to think through that, if there was something super important to me and I wanted it to be presented in a positive light, I'm not sure that I would want someone who's not part of my community but claims to be an ally to utilize it as a political tool, as a middle finger.
Mm-hmm. I would also say there's so many ways that are legal to align with your flag. Put a flag up at your house. Put a bumper sticker in your window, a window sticker in your window. Wear a pin. Have it be on your social media profiles. There's groups here locally that meet that are part of the LGBTQ community to show support and love for each other.
Yeah.
Those are things that actually you can represent your own personal feelings that way.
Yeah.
Don't rely on a mayor to break the law for you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's kind of a proxy thing, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
All right, we've got a break. It's 9:36 on News Talk 107.9. We'll be back. Okay,
with ChatGPT available, they're having a conversation on our Facebook Live that's making this crop up in my head. With ChatGPT currently available, how often do you go to your phone? So Google or Siri, whatever.
Yeah.
To ask it questions. Do you automatically default to ChatGPT now?
Oh, yeah.
I do.
Yeah, I do too. That's
I
my
don't
go-to.
even go to this at all to answer questions.
Yep.
In fact, I always felt like this wasn't adequate anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't feel like it was that awesome because I could refine my search in a web search to actually get what I wanted.
Yeah.
And ChatGPT has just made that so much faster for me now.
Yeah.
So it is interesting because they're talking about using your phones and how this system isn't that great. I don't think it's that great. And I think if you get familiar with ChatGPT, this one goes away. You just don't even use it.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, it's my new Google.
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Remember the first big search engine was Yahoo? Remember we used Yahoo for a few years and then Google came along and took over it.
Google. The Googs.
I've been kind of amazed at how many different AI models there are now. Mm-hmm. I've been using DeepSeek a little bit. I know it's Chinese owned and it's a little controversial, but it does some things better than ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Like it handles large volumes of text better than ChatGPT does.
Yep. It's annoyed me, but I've realized I get more of what I want.
Yeah.
You need to play the game with ChatGPT and create a relationship with your version of ChatGPT. So when ChatGPT provides me a synopsis of a crime story and I like the way they summarized it, if I compliment ChatGPT and I say, in the future, will you please do this way for me? Mm-hmm. Oh, I get so much better results.
Oh, yeah.
Honey goes a long way with ChatGPT.
Oh, yeah. It does. It learns what you like. Yeah. Yep. Agreed. Okay. We never did Timberline, right?
No.
Okay, let's do that here.
Okay. That studio cover session person that I reached out to?
Yeah.
They just answered.
Oh, good. Favorably? Not so much. 9:41 on News Talk 107. I'm Neil Larson, along with Julie Mason.
All right, let's chat about how you sleep. I was just telling Neil this morning, I haven't slept well for 2 weeks. I'm not really sure what's going on. I do know that one of my problems is my legs get a little bit achy, and that's from when I walk those extended miles, so I need to address that. But some people have figured out a way to address their sleepless nights, which is they are purchasing the recliner from Timberline Home. 10% of Americans don't even sleep in their beds. They sleep in a recliner or they sleep on a couch because it is more comfortable. And Timberline Home is now carrying a product that is designed to be slept in. It is a recliner that has heat, massage, and recline options. Also, an option for zero gravity that increases your circulation in your legs. So if you're that person who suffers with restless leg syndrome, things like that, a recliner might be your answer. And there is another huge perk. The Z-Cliners are made with a fabric that is infused with minerals that speed up blood flow by up to 30%. So your whole entire body is actually functioning better while you're sleeping. Right now at Timberline Home in Idaho Falls, you can save an additional $300 on the Z-Kleiner, but that's just for a limited time. So if you're needing help with your sleep and you think this could be the solution, you need to get down there fast. 711 East Anderson in Idaho Falls. Again, that's Timberline Home.
All right. Arguments underway in the Supreme Court.
Their allotted time.
Okay, and we don't have any audio. I thought we may have an audio feed, but I think they just simply played a clip. Of course, this is the one, if you weren't listening earlier and are not aware, there's a school district in Maryland that wants to force kids to read LGBTQ-themed books and not even allow a parental opt-out for those books. So a parents' rights group, they filed a lawsuit. And it's actually made its way up to the Supreme Court pretty quickly. It was, I think, last year that they ended the opt-out, and the lawsuit was filed in a federal court somewhere, sided with the school district, and then the Supreme Court took up the appeal. You never know until the ruling comes out, but I'm hoping it could be one of the milestone rulings that would help define parental rights issues in other contexts as well. A lot of it just depends on how they rule, how wide a swath that ruling will be. But I'm hopeful that it number one, will rule in favor of parents, and that it has a pretty wide swath.
I like the concept that this came forward with. I mentioned earlier that I appreciate that it's a very constitutional case. It is in complete reference to your freedom of religion. And I think that it's much easier for these judges to rule on something that has such definitive constitutional value to it. I think that's how we won the Roe v. Wade overturning. Mississippi they worked all the way up the courts with the concept that in the state of Mississippi, you're taking away our rights as a state to represent our constituents. Like, it was a very constitutional case that you federally have stepped into something that should be a state issue. And when they brought it forward that way, it made it possible for the Supreme Court judges to go, you're right.
Yeah,
you're right about that. This shouldn't have been something that federal judges stepped into the middle of. And it was much more nuanced and much deeper than that. But when you talk about fundamental rights that we have, it's easier for the judges to rule on that. I believe that that's one of the things that they're trying to use to stop these deportations. They're claiming fundamental rights of humans.
Yeah.
And that you have to review those before you send somebody back. That's actually that's a pretty good argument to look at. The issue there is they don't fall under our citizenship, so they don't get those rights.
Yeah.
And so that's what our side is arguing with all of those deportation hearings.
You know, it's interesting because I don't know if I've ever met this person, but is a Facebook friend, and he's very libertarian. He's actually opposing the Trump administration because he's talking really, really intensely about due process. But when I just think through it, this is a layman's view here. The due process prior to incarceration is different than due process prior to sending someone back to their original country.
Mm-hmm.
You're not depriving their ability to live and work and eat and make a life for themselves in their home country. But when you send someone to prison, you take away their fundamental rights. Now, if we've done due process correctly, the people who are in prison deserve to have had their rights taken away.
Yes.
Okay. But those two due processes are not equal. And I think people are trying to argue by throwing out that term due process as though it's the same as your Fifth Amendment right or, you know, all of the due process stuff that we have in the Constitution. I would argue it is not even close to equivalent.
Well, and that's what the Trump administration is saying, is that, sure, due process is a great thing that you deserve, I deserve, that we all deserve. But when you crossed the border illegally, that is when you violated the opportunity to have due process from step one. from step one over the border,
Yeah.
you vacated the opportunity to have that.
Right.
Had you come across the border correctly, and if you weren't an illegal immigrant, then we could talk about due process.
That's true. That's true, because due process is you apply for entry into the United States. You flip the middle finger at due process when you crossed illegally.
From the very, very beginning.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, and that's what the Trump administration keeps saying over and over again. That's their fight with Garcia, is that they're saying, great, whatever, we put him on the wrong list. We'll accept that you think that was an accident. We'll even call it an accident. But guess what? He's illegal.
Yeah.
That's why he does not have the right to due process. So the Trump administration is going clear back to step one, saying it was all negated from the very beginning.
Yeah, that's true. And it's not even feasible to apply due process, which can be very slow and cumbersome and time consuming, to how many millions of illegals that Biden brought over here.
Yeah, if you're already illegal, you're illegal.
You're right. That's true. You are illegal. And that alone is justification for a trip back home.
Right.
You're going back and you're not coming back.
Right. It's also interesting that if you think about what we just explained about the due process, and that you gave up that right, you vacated that right when you committed a crime by coming across the border illegally. When you look at all of that, it's the reason that the media is insistent upon calling this man a Maryland man.
Yeah.
Because that's the only way they can erase the argument that the Trump administration is making.
Yeah.
If you keep personalizing him as somebody belonging to that state, an actual resident of Maryland, you erase the argument that the Trump administration is making.
That's true. It's deflect away from the truth. So, Julie, I have a theory that most social studies or civic discussions have a Karate Kid analogy.
I'm not shocked by this.
Yeah. And so I feel like there's a core of people who believe that all you have to do is say the words due process, and it's like the crane. It was the move against which there is no defense. Mm-hmm. So if you come to me and you're like, we need to deport the illegals because they're here illegally, and I look at you and go, due process.
Yeah. I've
instantly won the argument for some observers that are watching the argument happen. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, no, there's not. I mean, the crane was a great move in Karate Kid. But I don't think tossing out the words due process, it has no refutation to it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, and they want it to be a universal coverage of it all.
Yeah.
And that's not how it works. So that's the second layer to the Trump administration fight here, is we're deporting people who have criminal backgrounds.
Yeah.
They're not just illegal immigrants. They're actually criminals as well with other crimes in America.
Yeah.
So they're doing a double layer of who they're sending home. And that's why they back up their argument with the concept that his wife had charges against him. He had been arrested because he was with MS-13 gang members. He has ties to MS-13. He has the tattoos as representation that he's part of. Like, that's their second layer, right?
Yeah.
The people who throw out due process like the crane move and saying it fixes everything, it doesn't fix everything. You can't use the crane move over and over and over again. It loses its validity if you do that.
Yeah. I think we are going to start a new contest though.
Okay.
Where we throw out some snippet of wisdom, and the listener has to guess whether it's Mr. Miyagi, Yoda, Uncle Ben from Spider-Man, or Ben Franklin.
Maybe let's just call him all Ben, because we don't Mr. Miyagi. We don't need his first name. It could be Ben.
It could be.
And Yoda's given name could be Ben.
That's true.
So it's just the Ben philosophy.
That's true. Yeah, it'll be the Ben contest. Which Ben are we talking about? Pick your Ben. All right, we'll be back. It's 9:52 on News Talk 107.9. Okay, I gotta run real quick.
Oh, go do your thing.
Been drinking water. Hold on.
Have you ever walked away from the desk with your earphones still on? You're like, blah.
Maybe.
You get pulled. Yeah, I've done that a few times. Okay. Oh, shoot, Spencer, don't break up I had no idea that Mr. Miyagi's first name was Patrick. Is it really? You've got a laughy face there. Is it really, Patrick? I don't know those movies well enough. I will tell you a story about my best friend. Her name's Betsy, and there will be listeners who know who I'm talking about. But middle school, high school, back then, we would go to like Kmart or one of the other stores, and we would buy the Teen Beat magazine or something similar. And they would always have these glossy pictures of your favorite actors and actresses in them. And my friend Betsy had the biggest crush on Ralph Macchio. She thought there was no man that was better looking than Ralph. And it was, still to this day, it's something we disagree on because I didn't see Ralph Macchio as attractive at all. I'm like, he's scrawny. And like, what are you seeing in him? But she just loved him. So her whole entire wall in her bedroom was Ralph Macchio posters. And because we had this ongoing conflict, I always looked at like the movies as like dismissible because it was part of my argument, right? Ralph's not that cute. Why did they put him as the lead actor? Blah, 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 blah. So there's a whole bunch of those movies I can't even remember. I can't even tell you the premise of Karate Kid 2. I don't know it. I remember the premise of Karate Kid 1.
Okay, I definitely remember Karate Kid 1, but I think Karate Kid 2 was that Okinawa when he went?
I have no idea.
I think that was Okinawa.
Yeah.
And I'm getting the short end of the stick.
Love.
No. We were laughing about it in there. Like,
number 1 and number 2, sitting in the tree.
No. Hopefully that didn't go out over the air. Although it didn't. I'm sure it didn't, but that would be funny.
Who was I was just telling them that my best friend, Bestie. Oh.
We got to go on. Hold on.
What's going on?
I'll tell you what's going on. Neal messed up. That's what's going on. We're back. Let's talk really quick. Town and Country Gardens, glow-in-the-dark petunias. They're coming Saturday night, Julie, and the public has a chance to not just see them, but buy them. And they'll be limited to buying 3, but Saturday night, Town and Country Gardens, from is it 6 to 10?
I think it's 6 to 10.
All right. You can go. They've actually, in their instruction space, they have a classroom out there. They're blacking out all the windows so people can walk through. It's like a reception line, sort of, and you'll be able to go through and see the glow-in-the-dark petunias.
Okay. You can find out all of the stuff about this event at mygardengeek.com. Again, that's mygardengeek.com. And a super friendly website that allows you to sign up for the newsletter. That puts you on a potential VIP list for the event on Saturday night. And a programming note, Rex from Town and Country Gardens is going to join us on Friday at 7:30 just to kind of chat about this event and the glow-in-the-dark petunias.
Is he bringing one?
He said he would. He said he should have them. They're not shipped yet, so he should have them by then.
Okay, well, good, because we're going to take a camera. We're going to go into either the supply closet or the janitor's closet, and we're going to take a time exposure picture.
We're going to try to do it.
And we'll show off these glow-in-the-dark petunias.
There we go.
Very cool. So if you want to check it out for yourself, south of Idaho Falls on the Yellowstone Highway, across from the malt plant. And by the way, while you're there, get your 4-step lawn program. It is not too late to get the step 1 down. That's the humates. And then step 2 will come along in another month or 2, and then throughout the summer, your lawn will look beautiful, lush and green. So, all right, that's going to do it for the show today. Thank you for joining us, Julie and I. We will be back tomorrow, though.
Mm-hmm.
Any guests tomorrow?
Not as of right now. We've got invitations out.
Not yet. Okay, Gotcha. Although we have in the pipeline Attorney General Raul Labrador, so. Anyway.
Wait, no, we do have a guest tomorrow. Do you know what I was thinking it was? It was Monday. It's not Monday, it's Tuesday. Yeah, just to say it real fast. Raul Labrador is joining us tomorrow.
Tomorrow, 9 o'clock. 9
Mm-hmm.
o'clock. Okay, we'll see you then.